everybody. This is the Paranormal Rangers podcast, and I'm Jonathan Dover. Joining me is Art Hardy, and of course, we have Bill with us today. Now, Bill is producing this at the same time, so his fingers are gonna be flying all over the keyboard. But Stan is still out. He did injure himself, and so he's taken a little time off, and we're hoping to see him back soon. And he'll be traveling to McMinnville, Oregon, I believe, in another week or so. And so he'll be doing some stuff up at McMinimus UFO Fest. Michelle is on the road today in her real job. And she's on her way from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas. She said that she's going to try to come on if she gets set up in time, but I told her we're not going to count on that, and we're just going to move ahead without. So today's topic is curses, and we're just going to title it Curses. It's there is... all of us have done it. We've all, cursed in the past. It's really funny because I always look at curses, and usually you hear somebody say, Jesus Christ, and they'll curse. I have to this date never heard anybody say, oh, Buddha, or Hare Krishna, I've never heard any other person's name mentioned aside from Jesus or God. So I don't know if that's saying something about our society today, but we're going to talk about these curses and how they can, we look at it from our viewpoint and we say, well, curses aren't scientific. They can't be proven. Yet you have curses all through history that have happened. You have all the way back to the days of Adam and Eve, where God cursed the garden and said that from now on, when he chased Adam and Eve out, he said, basically, you're going to work now. You're going to, by the toil of your hands and the sweat of your brow, you're going to work the earth to try to get something out of it. And so that's some of the first curses in Navajo culture. I'm sure Art will tell us some of the curses that happened there. And we throw out curses left and right every day. Sometimes we have Navajo witches that'll create curses. My grandfather he was trained to be a medicine man. And he told me that these curses are, when you're trained to be a medicine man, you're trained in everything. It's up to you to have a moral conscience and not use the bad stuff. So he says that really in being a medicine man, you had to know how the curse was put together in order to dismantle it and bring some relief to the people that the curse happened to. Now, in a quick story, there's a guy driving down the road, and his car kept pulling to the right, and he couldn't figure it out. He took it into the shops and everything else. Nobody could figure it out. And the medicine man told him that somebody put a curse on his vehicle. So they started searching. And down around the steering column on the inside of the engine compartment, they found a small bundle that was wrapped up and attached to the steering mechanism. And when they undid it, there was an arrowhead in there. And they said that thing was designed so that when he was going down the road, every now and then the wheel would jerk on him and cause him to almost drive off the road. And so they blessed the vehicle. They took that thing off and did a ceremony for that curse. and they were able to get rid of it. So, believe me, as a law enforcement officer for 31 years, I've had a lot of people cursing at me. I've had a lot of people threatening to kill me. I've had at least 3 individuals actually attempt to assassinate me, and I managed to survive all that.
Wow. But before, I just want to throw this in before, because I really want to hear Art's take on all this. But in the Hispanic community, and I've seen this up close and personal, even hanging out at a local park, it's Afro-Cuban in origin, and that would be Santeria. And these people take this very serious with cursing other people. And you would find certain artifacts, without getting into too many graphic details, showing what they were doing, even the sacrifice of animals. I mean, so these people, some people take, doing curses to others, like literally to a whole level where, I mean, they're using all means to do it. And I'm sure, like I said, they're taking this very seriously on trying to curse someone else. So I know from personal experience exactly what you're saying. So, but I would love to hear more about the Native American side of this. And Michelle is joining us.
All right. There you go.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, how you doing? Glad you could make it.
Yeah, me too. Good to be here with you.
Oh, we're just finishing our introduction, but one thing I wanted to say, and then I'm going to have Art talk about this from a Native standpoint. Curses, words are powerful. And by your words, you can create things, whether they're good or bad. You can cause good things to happen. You can have money come your way. You can have, if you desire a new vehicle, you can manifest those things. Likewise, if you're not careful, you can say things and those things will cause bad things to happen. And so words are powerful things. This is why it's called spelling, that those words can be activated and used against people. And so, we have to be mindful of that. Art, could you tell us in Navajo culture your views on curses?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us. Thanks, John, for having me, and thanks to Skywatcher. I believe your name is Bill, sir. Yes. Thank you guys for having me on again. And so getting into the discussion of curses, there's a lot of what John had started off with in telling his story about the arrowhead and the way that it can have a power or residual energy attached to it negatively as well as positive. And then that's really where we get involved in summoning or energy, manifestation, the power of thought. Again, we always go back to that, but I don't think we as people really understand just how powerful of a being that we truly are, what we're really capable of, and how what we say tends to manifest into something real. And this is where curses and spelling and all of the other stuff we just mentioned, that's where it comes into play. And you see, when you get into a Native American traditional setting or ceremonial setting, we're dealing with a group of individuals like the Native American church, where they would sit in a circle. And there's a lot of ceremonies that have this circular type format. And the idea there is that it's used for healing. It's not used for anything bad, but it's used for healing. And the way that works is everybody is focused on one objective, one thought, if you will. And that single prayer, that single-minded prayer is what turns into a reality. And you've seen all the different scientific experiments just throughout YouTube, TikTok, and other social medias where they talk about the power of words and expression can change water into different types of designs and other things. And so through that, it's been proven that what we say does have the power to impact both positively and negatively. And when it comes to doing prayers or ceremonies, as a medicine man, that's really where it starts at. I would consider myself a white light as versus someone who's out there to do harm, which I would consider a dark light, only because the energy that's entailed with that is coming from a very dark place, and evil tends to be a very dark element to begin with. So from our point of view, if that's something that people want to go towards and utilize in their life, it's not so easy to just get involved in the evil side of life. You're also asking for a lot of negative effects upon you and your family, and you see that, or well, I see it as a medicine man, where some people have gone to the dark side and have done and performed certain things in relation to cursing. And when that's happened, they have to come back because now they realize what they've done and they're not ready to die. And that's really where it comes down is people don't really think of their mortality when they're out there behaving or misbehaving. And when you come back to it, they're looking for some type of maybe a healing type ceremony or a cleansing of some kind. And they didn't realize that they were getting involved in that type of negative energy, so much so that now they've become sick. Now it's gone back to them almost like karma, right? And you mentioned the Buddha earlier. And that is true when it comes to energy. It's very funny like that whatever you asked for in one way will come back to you in another. And so we do have to be careful in how we pray for people. One of the things that I've realized now as a medicine man is that when we pray for protection, and I've heard many medicine men say this, is I want to pray for protection and I need protection for myself, from the north, south, east, west, from the front, from the back, from the sides, the top, the bottom, and even internally, right? Spiritually, mentally, physically, all of those things are included. But what ends up happening is that when you ask for that protection, and let's say you want to say, protect my life, protect my health. And as you're being protected, that energy has to come from somewhere. It just can't manifest out of nothing and be created into something else. It has to come from somewhere. So it tends to draw from other life forms and creatures. And there's a teaching behind this. In the Navajo culture, we have dogs. Dogs are a part of our life. And we use animals, even horses are a part of our lifestyle. And the livestock tends to get in the way of a lot of bad that happens to us. So if there's a curse that's happening, the animals are the ones that tend to take the full effect of that. And you'll see the horses get really sick or they might perish. The same with the other dogs, cats, animals that are around your house. They tend to be the ones that get in the way. And if you don't have any livestock, sometimes it ends up being a family member. And I think John can touch on that later, is when we ask for protection, we don't know where that energy is going to come from. So we have to be very careful in what we're asking for, as it can draw that energy from any life source, anywhere, from anything, actually. Right. And at that point, you end up becoming almost a negative power, just out of chance, and that's how, as a medicine man or a practitioner, I always caution people on that particular type of prayer is, if you're asking for protection for yourself, remember that energy's got to come from somewhere to protect you. So if there was a bullet that was meant for you, that bullet is now going to find another life form where it's going to take that life as opposed to yours. So those are some of the things that we believe as Native Americans and how our prayers and ceremonies work. So we were very cautious with that.
I have to ask, because you brought up a critically important point here, the power of the prayer, a person's faith, belief. How difficult is it in from your position as a medicine man, and how important is it for a person to actually have that faith when you're dealing with something like this? Do you run into that where you have to tell people, listen, you need to believe in this power of this prayer. You have to have faith in what we're doing here. Otherwise, is it just like worthless if you don't have that faith system?
There's a spiritual side to this whole thing. And in modern science, it does not recognize the spiritual aspect. It's just all sciencey. And as soon as it gets into spiritualism, they say, okay, put the brakes on, we're not going any further. And that's just myth it's folk tales, it's all this other stuff. That being said, I've had a lot of people ask me at different conventions, should I start smudging? And I tell them, I says, go back, find out what people did in your culture and utilize that for protection. And the one thing that everybody gets wrong about it is that when you pray, you have to have intent. And if you don't have that intent, you're just going through the motions, and it's not really doing anything. So prayer is a keystone of any of this, that you actually have to pray. And I pray in Jesus's name, and that works for me, and it's worked all these years for me. So I've had near shootings, people shooting at me. First time I was shot at, I didn't even know, and they always say that God protects those that are just plain stupid, that they don't know, the ignorant. But it took me a while to figure out somebody was shooting at me with a 22 from a tree line, and I kept hearing these, zings going by my ears. And about 6 rounds later, I figured out, oh, somebody's shooting at me, and I got out of there. But so sometimes you don't know, you're protected. I've been told in the past that there is protection around me. I've been told that my aura is blinding white, and people that can see it are basically blinded. I don't know. I've never seen it myself. Well, I have seen it. I've done the little things where you look at your aura on your hand. I can do that. But, I can't just look at somebody and look at their aura. So something I'm still working on.
Yeah.
It's interesting to listen to the impact of the power of the word. It begins with thought. And our thoughts are very powerful, and we have to be very careful how we speak our thoughts. When we get into the world of power and darkness, we can put a powerful word out there that, like you said, the word karma comes to mind, you've been talking about. And so when we're in either Native American culture or even our daily lives, we're creating our reality. So the impact of our reality could be the world we're living in and what we're creating. And so today we have the power of the word, with all 4 of us being on this, that people are listening to our word and extracting that powerful things that we're saying into their own lives, and the impact that we have on our audience members or the public, so on and so forth. So, in relationship to the paranormal world or the phenomena, there was a story where I was walking with an associate. We were down south in the Escalante area, and he was jokingly saying, hey, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a ship come and visit with us? And he kept saying it over and over again. We just kind of shrugged it off and said, oh, you're hilarious. But he kept saying it. Well, what happens right before we get to our rooms there at his lodge, what shows up is a UFO, and it shined its lights down on us. And it was not a happy feeling. And in fact, I was so startled, I just kind of rushed to my room. But I'm saying that's how powerful that we are, even in the world we're in the paranormal world. So those are my thoughts.
Right. No, I think all of you guys are hitting on some good things there, and that is all important, every aspect of it. And as I said in the beginning, we don't know our power. We don't know how powerful we are as universal agents. I mean, that's what we are. We may be autonomous to some level or some effect, but we're not completely autonomous. And that's the thing about humanity, is when you get us in a room together, our energy right? Our energy it expands and it grows in power. So when we get into these ceremonies where you have multiple agents standing in a room and you have a focal point, what are you doing? You're actually pushing all of your thoughts, all of your prayers, all of your emotion, all of your energy to this one focus point. And then you see the residual effects after, where molecular structure can change. And you see people coming out of these ceremonies fully healed from cancer. Now, some of that is unexplainable. And there's another huge issue that's going on right now in the United States with peyote. They're trying to figure out if peyote is actually the element that creates healing, right? And so they're trying to use this mescaline or whatever's within the peyote as an agent to take it apart and see what it does scientifically. But I don't think anyone's really considered just how effective telepathy can be, and how we can interact telepathically with one another. I think Native Americans do a very well perform that kind of effect with one another when we sit in a room together, if we have the same thing in mind, the same type of focus and the same type of faith. And maybe that's the same in a church setting, and so for where I'm at and what I see, that is kind of where I think, Bill, you mentioned something earlier. Could you repeat that again?
As far as the power of one's belief, faith,
right,
and having it come true. Because if you don't, like even John was mentioning, if you don't have that faith, you don't have the belief in that faith, then it's worthless to me.
Correct. Intent was one of the words he used, but we can also say that intent is equal to faith. As to what we believe, and if you truly believe that, it will manifest in its own way. And just as all of us are sitting here now, let's think about this for a second. They usually tell us that if you want to be successful, you surround yourself with successful people. Is that more than a mindset, or is it actual energy that you're drawing from these individuals as to how you would propel yourself into a successful state? And that's relevant. That's a relevant argument there. And we don't think about those things. Those are thoughts and terms that are just above the society as far as the non-spiritual person that's out there. And so education, they rely on education, rely on experience. But if we're truly using our talents spiritually as to what we are, then we should also consider telepathy. We should all consider transfer of energy. We should also consider the fact that when we're in a group, we have greater power. And so if we do that, maybe it's not such a hard climb to get to that success that you're looking for, or to get through a challenge that you're facing. This is why we sit in a group when you're sitting in a room full of alcoholics and you're the one that's there as a brand new person, and you look around and you see all these individuals who have gone past the addiction, but they're there to tell a story. But the energy is all the same, and the collective there is to get healed, to get sober, and boom, it's productive. So that's the point I'd like to make.
Michelle brought up a great point, the power of thought. But as you mentioned, it's also the power of projection. Say you see a bunch of people, you're at a gathering, at an event, like when Jonathan was at Roswell and I was there. I can see how he was and Stanley was, and people were gravitating to them. It's the power of the energy, the projection. On the flip side, when you see a bunch of people doing things that you feel is there's a negative vibe going on there, well, that's the energy, that's the projection that they're all sharing with each other and projecting it outwards. So even, you know what I mean? The power of projection, we all have that energy. And when we're all together, like you're saying, in a circle, and everyone's focused on that one positive aspect, but obviously you can see what the result is. Correct.
Even with curses, it's the same way. Now, to undo a curse, remember that a majority of that, the person that is cursing, they're usually an individual. It's not so much as a group, I would think anyway, because it's very hard to find a group that's just completely full of hate and they're just out to destroy an individual. But even then, that energy is not so complicated or not so powerful, because you're dealing with only one human being versus having a room full of individuals who are praying to get this person out of that curse. obviously you're going to overpower whatever was there before. And that's kind of the base as to how ceremonies work. And going one-on-one as a medicine man, sometimes I sit there with an individual and it's just the two of us in this room. And so when I start getting into this, I need them to tell me what's going on. I need them to tell me what's happening to them mentally, spiritually, physically, simultaneously while I'm doing my prayer and I'm calling to the different gods we have. I'm using my instruments, as I call them. I'm using all of that. And so it works. It works in the way that somewhere, somehow, our people have figured out this very sacred way, a solution, a pathway through a spiritual combination of things, thought, and what you project when you speak, as well as a physical element, which is sometimes a bone whistle. Sometimes we use cedar. Some people use sage. And when you combine these elements together, and now you become a powerful agent of something good, if that's what your intention is. So to me, that's where the sole authority rests and is vested is within us, as we are godlike creatures, and we are God's creatures, and we do speak and we do manifest and we do have the energy to create a whole new body if we choose to do, which it does anyway. Every 7 years, your cells completely replace themselves. So we are godlike, and I don't think people really take that into account on their day-to-day life as they're buying their Starbucks.
I like that thought process of what you're talking about, renewing of spirit. When you've been a medicine man, have you ever come across a dark entity of someone who's taken on the dark arts and watched them renewed again through the spirit of light and powerful intent and the power of the word that you're using in the prayers or in the ceremonies itself?
I've been a part of ceremonies where there was a young person that was a Satan worshiper, a devil worshiper, a Satanist, I guess that's what it is, Satanist. And we were in this ceremony, and he wouldn't give us the respect that ceremony deserved. And so he was turning around and facing away from us, and then he was chanting in his own whatever words he was using. Maybe that's a Satanist thing, I don't know, but he was chanting and doing all these things, and just being really rebellious towards the ceremony itself. And at some point, the people that were there, the other medicine men, they all got up and said, it only works if the person wants to be involved in this. We can't help anyone who doesn't want to be helped. And now let that ring out, because that's true across the board. Doesn't matter what religion you believe in, that if you're not willing to give yourself up to that faith you believe in, it defeats the purpose of even having faith to begin with. And so we have to consider that as medicine men. When I start to talk to somebody, I typically do an interview prior to actually engaging with those individuals. And so when I do that, I'm asking questions, and I'm finding out information, and I'm realizing if they're actually true or not. Are these guys faithful or not? What kind of faith do they have? Do they believe in this type of ceremony? Do they believe in a tradition or a culture of some kind? And what is their motivation to get better, to get well? Is it just the fact that they want to live? Did they come across their own mortality, and something had happened to them where they were faced with death, and now they're starting to come back out of it, and they're like, you know what, I realize the ways that I was going, and here I am, and I don't want to die just yet. I have a lot to live for. I'm afraid of death, et cetera, et cetera. And so who am I fighting at that point? Am I fighting the individual who has that thought about himself? Am I fighting God himself? You get into this argument of who am I actually competing against as a medicine man. And so when you go back to someone who's sitting there who might be practicing the dark art and wanting to come out of it and wanting to be straight in their life and not do any more of that, because now they've seen that all it's brought them is pain and suffering, misery, and they don't want to deal with that anymore. It's made them sick some way in their mind, spiritually. And so at that point, it really becomes a 50-50 is what I would call it, because I need them to believe that they're going to come out of it, that they don't want to be that way in order for me to do what I got to do on my side. And I consider myself a mediator because I have other talents other than just ceremonial purposes. There's other talents that I have that are involved in what I do. And they're very spiritual. And a lot of people will probably say, that's not possible. I don't believe in any of that. You know, that's beyond the capability of human beings, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm telling you right now that there is another side of humanity that we never ever tap into. And I will say that if we had a Buddhist on the line right now, they might be more acceptable to what I'm talking about. And they would probably even understand what I'm referring to as to this power that we all possess, but we rarely tap into. We don't have the focus. We don't have the mindset or the discipline to want to walk that line and to put our minds there. So as I'm talking about a third eye of some kind and telepathy and energy-based type ceremonies, and then you start to really get into more discussions about, well, I'd rather just go back to the hospital because that's not as complicated. I don't need to believe in anything. I just pop a pill, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my take on the whole thing.
I have to ask all three of you, because I'm naive here, because obviously I'm not Native American. Well, I kind of am from Puerto Rico, but that's a whole story. When you say dark arts, are there native dark gods that any of you can speak about? Because you say gods, in a plural, not singular form. And also, can you, as a medicine man, as you're talking about this characteristic that you have, like a third eye, can you identify what you're up against when you're dealing with a curse, specifically a god or multiples?
Yes, I can. And I do it. I do it all the time. And one of the things I realized is that your human spirit is real. Your energy is real, and it takes the shape of a spirit. I've been in contact with spirits to where I've seen them come out of the body. And I've seen spirits attached to human beings to where I was actually able to grab them and pull them off of human beings. Now, even having said that, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of viewers out there who are going to say, oh my God, this guy's crazy, he doesn't know what he's talking about, etc. But see, now that's where spirituality comes in, and where the Native American ceremonies start to take over. This is not something that is just taught anywhere. You have to go through years and years of training, and there's a certain way to take care of yourself in those types of scenarios and situations. There's medicine that has to be put on me. I have to eat medicine. I have to take these herbs and other medicines to protect myself from that, because I don't want that entity to jump on me to get me sick and to be following me around. And so there's certain songs we sing too that actually will prevent that entity or being from jumping onto us, or taking over our body, spirit, and mind. And the possession is a very real thing as well. So yes, I have seen them. I have participated in battles with them, spiritual battles anyway. And I'll give you a little taste of what I've seen. There was a woman years ago that had come to me for help, and she walked in, and her, have you ever seen anyone who's about to pass away? They turn gray. Mm-hmm. So we won't go there, but anyway, they had that color. And so as they walked in, they were hunched over and they're barely walking. And the lady was like, please just help me. I don't know what's wrong with me. And so I said, have a seat. Let's get this thing going. We start off, and halfway through, we find out that I find out that, there's a spirit attached to her, and it's a very close relative of hers that had just passed away. And what that entity was doing was drawing her energy out of her, and was actually taking her life very slowly. And just the life force is a real thing. So for all the people out there that actually use astral projection, and they get involved in that astral projection, your life force is a delicate thing, and you can use all of it in an astral projection to where you don't come back. But let's go back to my story. So now you're talking about a spirit that's attached to a person, and then once I get that spirit to come back towards me, and so I had to say certain things in our language, in our prayers, to get that spirit off of the body, to detach itself. And once I did that, it flew around the room and it made a bunch of noise. It hit the ceiling, it cracked the door really loud, and then it flew. It was trying to fly through me, which at that point I was able to grab it spiritually. I don't know how else to explain it other than that, but there's this other thing that I use that I'd rather not say right now, maybe at a later time, but I used this thing and I grabbed it and I was able to hold on to it. But in the meantime, I had its full emotion come over me, and I instantly started crying uncontrollably because I could feel that energy of this poor soul that he had no idea that he had died, that he had passed away, that he was no longer of this world. And the only thing he was clinging on to was this person because that's all it recognized. But come to find out that person had property of this individual, and that's also what he was attached to. So it was kind of a haunting in a way. And so as I was fighting with this entity and I released some of this emotion, I explained to it in my own language that you're no longer alive and you no longer have a name. You're not breathing. There's no air coming out of your mouth or your chest or anything else. So as I released it, it took off and it hit the doorway of my house so loud, I thought the window shattered. And at that very moment, the person, the lady that was sitting there, she gasped for air like she was underwater for a long time. And she came up and she made this huge noise, ooh, and just took a big deep breath and instantly just started laughing uncontrollably for like 5 minutes straight. And when we were watching her face color went from gray and it got all the way back to a pinkish color. And she sat up and she came in with a cane. That was the other thing. And she left and she forgot her cane after that. She didn't need the cane. She just kept cracking up. And she walked over to me and she hugged me really hard. And she goes, I don't know what you did to me, but she goes, I just feel alive. I've never felt like this so good. And she left. And that was the end of that. But as to answer your question, I've seen it and I have fought these things. Yes.
You know, Art, you bring up a story that I had witnessed too, and this is real. I was sitting next to a friend of mine and I went to a prayer circle for them. They were depressed and constantly wore the color black. And we had a candle in the middle, and there was, I wouldn't say a medicine man, but someone who was a shaman who recognized themselves as a shaman. And as a group, we had several teenagers there, and everybody was praying on behalf of these troubled teens. And this individual next to me started to cough up blood in front of me. And we grabbed the trash can, and this individual was throwing up into the trash can, and the blood was dissipating. And then it started coming through his pores. And then it would disappear. And then all of a sudden, this young man jumped up, just tore off his black T-shirt and had a white T-shirt, and he goes, I will never wear black again. His countenance changed, to your point with this woman, and he was free of what the attachment that he had on him. And he says, I will only wear black if I choose to, not because something was telling me to. So these things are real. And, you know, today in the UFO world, it's called hitchhikers. You know, we bring them with us if we don't know how to use the medicine to rid and bless ourselves after we've been in a situation that we put ourselves into.
Yeah, from my experience, for 27 years, I was a cultural specialist investigating archaeological crimes. The Navajo Nation has over 350,000 archaeological sites that they know about. Mm-hmm. Another 2 to 3 million probably exists that they don't know about. And my job was to protect that stuff. And so I was constantly going to archaeological sites. I was doing reburials of human remains that were 700 to 900 years old. And, you know, I had to go out there and do this as part of my job. Most Navajos wouldn't get near these places because that's what tradition tells them, that you shouldn't be there. These spirits can attach to you and they can cause havoc. they can cause sickness and even death. And yet my job was to go out there and protect these places and go to them and view what was there. And so I did it with a sense of respect, would clear my mind and pray for protection. And then I would go in and do these things. And then afterwards I would get home and I would break out my cedar and smoke myself and pray again for that protection. And I did this for 27 years and never had anything bad. And in talking with medicine men, they told me that if I was there to protect the thing and I treated it with the utmost respect that it was deserved, then those things would leave me alone because I was there to help them. And so there were things that I wouldn't do. I wouldn't go into certain places. Film crews asked me, can you go in this little room and we'll film you on the other side? And I said, no, can't do that. And, you know, they were disappointed, but the film still came out really well. So there are things that you do when you're there to always keep that level of respect about the people that were there before, even though it was a long time ago, because their energies still reside there. And I have seen pot hunters go out and dig up human remains and put the pottery in their house that were basically grave goods. And things happen to them. You know, they would break out in diseases and just all kinds of weird stuff. They get sick from inhaling the dust. You know, I've seen some that went to trial that one guy, you know, 4 guys were on trial. One got hit by a car. One got broke out in boils all over his body as he was sitting on the stand. Right after the medicine man said, you know, we can't do anything, you know, what's going to take place is already taking place. And another one got really sick until he almost died. And that was just during the trial. So, yeah, things happen and you see them and you go, wow, you know. And the best story that I ever have, and it's kind of like, it's all about respect. We were working a case with U.S. Forest Service, and there was two big giant pots standing 4 feet tall that were stolen out of a site in Sedona. And the attorney for the Prescott Yavapai tribe at this time offered full amnesty to anybody that turned them in. Now, from our viewpoint, Prescott Yavapai didn't have any familiar relationship to those pots, but they said they did. The people turned up, they gave them up. And we wanted to prosecute, but the U.S. Attorney's Office said as soon as they believed they had amnesty, they in fact did have amnesty. So we just said, well, you know, the spirits will exact their own revenge. Later on, that attorney was working with the government, and he happened to be at Petroglyph National Monument, and he tripped and took a header right into an archaeological petroglyph panel and busted his head open.
Wow.
And had to get stitches and all that stuff. And we heard about that and we just says, hey, the ancient people got their revenge. You know, that it all came back and manifested itself.
I think there is a really unfortunate stereotype that goes on in this country. And Hollywood has a lot to do with it. That when they refer to a site, it's cursed. I don't believe that. I believe it's protected from negative energy, from coming into it. So I just got the chills saying that. So what do you all three think about that?
Yeah, no, you're right on that. So one of the things about our counterparts, the Anasazi, we talk a lot about them. And there's a lot of sites that are out there. It's what John is talking about, the archaeological sites that exist. Chaco Canyon being one of the big ones around here in Arizona. And the part of that is, imagine being a localized community, and you're such a micro community that you don't see any outside entities, you don't see any other resources coming from anywhere else other than your own little tribe that you have, and they would probably have to travel X amount of miles just to get some type of help or trade or whatever they got to do. But mind you, what they do have, they're there praying about that, and they're there putting ceremonies and things on top of what they own as to how it's going to be protected. And so at this day and age, we call it cursed because we're disturbing it. But from their perspective, they were protecting it. And I believe that's what you're talking about, Bill.
Exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think that's so important because there's such a misnomer, especially when it comes to culture. That's sensitive, that means so much to us, our cultures, and when you have this misinterpretation, misrepresentation, and like I said, a lot of it has to do with Hollywood or TV or whatever it is, and I think that's it's unfortunate, and I'm glad people like you are, and both of you, Michelle and John and Stanley, are here to provide real information and to be teachers.
Right. That's why I started, Bill, was to do that, was to tell my story, my version of it from a Native American perspective, and not have, as you said, Hollywood or some other race of people telling our story, because a lot of it's fabricated. I mean, a case in point is the Skinwalker. They put that thing out there like it's going to change into anything that's out there. And one of the big ones is what a werewolf, they make them look like werewolves and big scary creatures with big fangs and all of this. And, that's just not true. But again, Hollywood has to sell a story. So that's the way they go with it. But what ends up happening is that if you don't challenge someone's lie, it tends to become truth. And that's true in society, is if we don't challenge anyone that's providing false information, that is accepted as the truth or as a fact eventually. And that's the way we've seen history written. The Bible being one of the big things is that's how it plays out. So for me, why I would be here, why I'm here today, is because I got to challenge some of those stories and those lies that are out there, the misinformation, misrepresentation that's going on, and tell it from an aspect that is true, and I can prove. And I invite you, Bill, to come down to Arizona and hang out with me for a week or two, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Next time I'm there, I'll be hanging out with Jonathan, Marianne, Rob, but we only got a few minutes. So Jonathan and Michelle, what's your take on this?
My take is sensationalism and fear are the products of our world today. And we are capitalizing on fear, and we don't have solutions to what we're experiencing in our daily lives with the economy. We're talking about community energy here. When we're selling fear, everybody's going to fear. If we sell love, everybody's going to love.
The idea of fear, as Michelle said, is prevailing today. The news media, the politicians, they all push this idea of fear and to get you to react. And over, it's this fear that gets in the way. And you can't look at that like that. You have to just say, irregardless, it's not going to be like that forever. And I'm going to live my life the best way I can. And I'm not going to worry about those outside influences. I tell people all the time, can you physically control something? And if you can't control it yourself, why worry about it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why spend all your time and all your energy and worry about that thing? And then, you know, you've expended all that energy. Now, like we were saying, these archaeological sites, when somebody dies, you're composed of energy. That energy has to go somewhere. Energy can't be destroyed. It can't be created. It exists. And so that energy sometimes attaches to inanimate objects. And that's why we leave those things alone, of the people that have died before, because that energy could still be on there.
I got to say, I think it's very important for a program like this to put out the information to the public and even to people across this country, because like I said, there's such a stereotype, you know, an opinionated perspective. And like for me, I'm very interested. I that's something that I'm involved with all the time. I'm very open-minded. I like to learn new things. It's so critical to culture too, and for people within cultures to understand that, like I think it was Arthur saying, there's so many commonalities. You know, when you break it down, it's the faith, it's the belief. As long as you have that, it doesn't matter if you use sage or whatever other means to ward off something that is like a curse or something. As long as it has true meaning to you and the power, like you all mentioned, the power of thought, of projection and everything. I mean, this is so important. And yes, all right, I will definitely take you up on that because I would love to see that in person myself.
Great.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everybody that tuned in.
Yes.
And thank you for those that commented. We do read the comments, and some of them were really interesting. So we appreciate that.
And Art, we got to have you back.
I'm here. I'm available.
Art's like, we should get Art back every month, like just to give that, or even an art spot just for the wise words that you have.
Yeah.
And it's across the board. Yeah. It's not just for the Native American culture. It's for everyone.
Correct.
And just so everybody out there knows, we called Art last night and asked him if he could get on. And so thank you.
Thank you, Art, for coming on. Yeah, we appreciate it.
No problem. I love you guys. I love you guys. And here I am, showing that love.
Thank you. Same here. And Bill, thank you for coming on today, Mr. Skywatcher.
It was an honor to be here with all of you and looking forward to what you guys, and hopefully Stanley will be back next week. Hopefully. Hope you're feeling better, Stan, if you're watching. And Michelle, you can take us out.
Yeah, we have an incredible show coming on next week. Please tune in. We have a wonderful live show coming up. We're going to have a NASA whistleblower, and that's all I'm going to say. But please join us tomorrow because we get the first live news to tell everybody what's going on. I was able to get that first live show, and it's going to be exciting to find out what has come forward in the UFO world. And that's all I can say. And we want to promote, Stan's going to be in McMinnville, Oregon, at a UFO fest up there coming up in May. I know we had a little banner, but I can't pull that up in the moment. But I wanted to, there you go. Come if you're in that area or wanting to go and meet up with Stan. But we appreciate everybody in the audience today. We'll have a great day and a great week.
Good night.